Sometimes the biggest changes in our lives begin so quietly we don't even realise they're happening. A child waits by a window for someone who's never coming home. A bedroom door closes. A hand that should offer comfort teaches fear instead. And somewhere along the way, the places that were meant to feel safe become the places we spend a lifetime trying to escape. The strange thing is, the world never seems to notice. The birds still sing at sunrise. The tide finds its way to shore. Life carries on, completely unaware that behind one front door, a child is quietly learning lessons they'll spend decades trying to unlearn. Learning that love comes with conditions, that surviving and living are somehow the same thing. Until one day, something interrupts the story we've been told, the one we have continued telling ourselves. A quiet sense that perhaps we deserve more than we believed, that life might have the possibility to look different. That kind of hope doesn't crash through the door demanding to be noticed. It slips in quietly. A conversation, a stranger, a memory, a whispered prayer, a single thread that refuses to disappear no matter how dark the night becomes. And if you're willing to follow that thread, sometimes it leads you home. Welcome to What Would They Say? I'd like to acknowledge the Awabakal people as the traditional custodians of the land on which I am recording this conversation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. As today's conversation reaches across the world to New Jersey, we'd also like to acknowledge the Lenape peoples, the traditional custodians of the land where our guest story is shared. We recognise that connection to country, culture, and community endures. May we continue to listen, learn from, and honour the wisdom of First Nations people across the globe, whose stories, cultures, and connection to place continue to enrich our shared human experience.
I really had nobody to confide in. And I was like, well, I don't know where my dad is, so maybe this guy will be okay. My stepfather crossed every line that a decent human being would cross. He jumped into the back seat of the car and put a knife to my throat and told her to drive. It's a storm, but I was like, no, it's not. You got to sit in the middle of that and look at the magnificence of these waves around you. I'm just going to start unraveling all of this and keep going.
Before we begin today, I'd like to let you know that this episode contains discussions of childhood sexual abuse, domestic and family violence, emotional abuse, trauma, attempted abduction, and grief. These conversations can be confronting, particularly for those with lived experience. Please take care while listening and don't hesitate to pause or step away if you need to. While today's conversation explores some incredibly difficult chapters, it is ultimately a story of resilience, healing, and hope. We hope that wherever you are on your own journey, you'll find something in Ruth's story that reminds you you are not alone. There are some stories that leave you wondering how one person could possibly survive everything life placed in front of them. This is one of those stories. As children, we are taught that home should be the safest place in the world, that the adults around us are there to protect us, guide us, and show us what love looks like. But what happens when the very people entrusted with your safety become the source of your deepest wounds? Today's guest, Ruth Carroll, has lived through a lifetime that most of us would struggle to comprehend. Childhood abuse, sexual violence, domestic violence, abduction, loss, trauma layered upon trauma. Yet somehow beneath it all there remained a quiet thread of hope that refused to let go, one that had been woven within her without her realising, so much so that it saved her life more than once. Today, Ruth is an author, a public speaker, and a survivor's advocate. She has written 3 books sharing her journey and the lessons she's learned along the way, with a 4th already on the horizon. Through her writing and her willingness to speak openly about the darkest chapters of her life, she's helping others find language for their own stories and hope for what comes next. This conversation isn't about dwelling in the darkness. It's about understanding how a little girl who never knew what safety felt like became a woman who now dedicates her life to help others find healing. There are moments in this episode that are difficult to hear, but there are also moments of extraordinary resilience, faith, and hope. Ruth's story is a reminder that while trauma can shape our lives, it does not have to define them. Thanks for joining me, Ruth.
I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Let's go back to your childhood and talk a little bit about what life looked like before your parents separated.
Before they separated, it was a lot of fun. I have a little sister. She's 6.5 years younger than me, so she was really, really young through a lot of this stuff. But my brother, he's a year older, and we were kind of like best friends. So we kind of did everything together. He was a guy, he's a boy, so I kind of became a tomboy. We climbed trees and had, fun swimming and went into the woods and found snakes and, all that fun stuff. And life was great. My mom used to bake and, we had Christmases. I remember the Christmas tree always had like a million things underneath. It was a happy time.
That didn't last for you, unfortunately. When your parents separated, things started to look a little bit different. Do you want to tell us about that time?
That came right like after my little sister was born. I could see that there was, being a kid, you can't really tell, but like they fought a lot more, my parents, and wasn't long after that they said, well, we have to move. And we moved into my grandparents' house, and that was the last time I saw my dad for a while. Didn't know what was going on, just knew that we had to move and that we would be living there. And that started a new chapter in my life.
What was it like after moving into your grandparents' house?
It was kind of exciting at first because they live near the beach, and we always went to that beach in the summertime as kids. And my cousins, they lived in Brigantine, that was the city. And so I was like, well, maybe this won't be too bad. It was during the summertime, so we weren't in school, so I didn't really have to worry about meeting new friends and all of that stuff because it would just be going to the beach and hanging out with my cousins. So I thought, but things kind of didn't work out that way either.
In your book, you mentioned that your mum wasn't overly present during that time after the move.
It was hard because she was absent a lot, and I really didn't understand. I thought, well, maybe me and my brother and my little sister did something wrong because she was no longer around, and she's just like, Grandmom and Pop-Up they'll take care of you. Don't worry about anything. And so being young, didn't really know any better. I just kind of dismissed it and went with the flow and hoped that they would, because I had good memories of my grandparents up until then. My grandfather made these sandcastle things, but they weren't like the ones on the beach. He would make banks, like an actual physical building bank out of the beach sand. And he would mold it to look just like the bank that he was making. And he would present it to them and he would sell it to them and they would buy it and put it on display. So I would go to the beach and help him get the sand and the shells that he needed for it. So it was kind of fun in the beginning because we got to do things like that. So I was kind of happy at first, but the longer we were there, things kind of changed, not for the good.
I've heard you mention about him sort of leaning into your interest in wildlife and snakes in particular. You mentioned that
Yes.
earlier, and using that as a way to initially connect with you.
Yes. Me and my brother, we had found a garden snake and we kept it because my mom, she was like me. She just liked weird things like that. And so we kept him in a cage and he actually grew to be 5 foot long. And we used to carry him around the house. They're non-aggressive, non-poisonous, so he was not a big deal. So my grandfather knew that Marty was his name, and he knew that I loved Marty. So he says, I got a snake that you might be interested in. And that I was excited. I thought that would be, that would be cool. I couldn't introduce it to Marty because Marty would probably eat it because he was big, and this other snake he told me was smaller. And he said, but I have to introduce it to you at night. And I was like, okay. And so that night when I went to bed, I was like, okay, well, he never showed me the new snake. So he came into the bedroom, though, that night. And that's when I learned what snake he was really talking about.
Your grandmother wasn't approachable during that time either, was she? So when your grandfather started to abuse you, she wasn't really someone who you could go to and say, hey, this thing's happening and I don't understand it.
No, because as I got older in life, I realized, she had some really serious mental problems. But back then as a kid, I learned that I couldn't approach her because she was on medications because she was schizophrenic. I did not know that until later on in my life. And she would try to force those pills onto me and make me and my brother, eat them. So we would spend a lot of time running away from her. She would bathe us all together, me and my brother, and not my little sister because she was still too young, but my cousins. There were 3 of them that came over to the house all the time. She would put all 5 of us in a scalding hot bathtub and make us bathe together that way. We were 6, 7, 8, and 9, so we were all still younger and didn't start to change yet. But so because of those things that she did to us, we kind of ran away from her. So she was not approachable at all.
How does that feel when you've gone from quite a safe and happy childhood into a space where everybody is a threat? Your mum's not around. You don't understand why, so there's a level of abandonment there. And then the people who are your caregivers are the people who are actually harming you. As a young woman, how do you navigate that?
I didn't know how to navigate that, to be honest. I really had nobody to confide in. I was afraid to tell people what my grandfather was doing. So my cousins, I didn't tell them because I didn't want them to be afraid, so I kind of hid it. And my father, I was very angry at because I blamed him that he's not around. It's like, where is he? He abandoned us. And then my mom just kind of picked up her own life and kind of left us. So it was a very sad and lonely place because I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know who to go to. So I kind of just shut down inside and just kept trying to be a kid and trying to be happy. And it was just very difficult. It was very sad and lonely, a very lonely time.
Listening to your story, I was really struck by that acceptance of, okay, this is just what life looks like for me. And what that did to you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it set you up to accept behavior that you didn't deserve for the rest of your life.
It did. It not necessarily made me feel like it was okay and acceptable, but I really had nothing to base it on. So I wasn't sure whether it was right or wrong. So, and it started from the age of 6. So growing up, I kind of looked for guidance, but never had any. So I just accepted what came down the road as normal because this is the way it's always been for me.
This is something I hear a lot in survivors' stories where it's not until those conversations start happening, whether it's at school or with girlfriends, that's the first time that you kind of go, oh, hang on, what I've been experiencing isn't what the people around me have been.
Exactly. And that left me in a really bad position. And I still never told anybody, but it made me feel like a really horrible, ugly person and was like, wow, I'm damaged and nobody's ever going to want me because this is how it's supposed to be, the way they're explaining it. But I've already been having sex with a man since I was 7. So it left me in a really bad, vulnerable place of despair. It was very heartbreaking for me.
And incredibly confusing.
Yes, and it set me up for a lot of a lot of poor decisions in teenage life and then early adulthood. Not having any direction from anybody, it was very, very destructive to me because I didn't know what was right or wrong. Didn't know where that we're supposed to have boundaries and guidelines, and you're supposed to respect yourself. And sex isn't a chore. You don't do it so that you can go outside and play with your friends. Because that's where I was. If I wanted to see my friends, I had to do this, and this. And that's what I thought that was for. So I don't want to get ahead of everything. I'll wait for you, but it really set me up for disaster in relationships.
Well, let's walk into that because your mum bought a partner home, and what should have been a time where you were able to step out of survival mode and feel comfort back living with your mum and who you thought was going to be another safe adult in your life. That's not how it turned out for you.
No, we did get out of my grandparents' house. It was only for the summer. And when we first moved out, I was excited because my mom was back. She had to be back because it was school. We had to go to school. I was excited because we moved back to the same town that we moved away from. So I would be going to school with my same friends. So I was excited about that. The place that we lived in was really like, it was fun because me and my brother could go outside and find the snakes and go through the marshes and do all the stuff outside that we like to do. But the house inside was kind of infested with bugs and fleas and things that really didn't belong living inside. My little sister, I remember her getting bit up terribly by the fleas, but it was okay because at least there was no one there to hurt me. So I thought. And then it didn't take long. A few months later, my mother had introduced us to this new person. And I was like, well, I don't know where my dad is, so maybe this guy will be okay. And we kind of were like, okay, let's just try it out and we'll see. And that turned upside down fairly quickly.
He didn't turn out to be much different to your grandfather.
No, my grandfather, he made me touch him, but didn't really full on do the wrong things that my stepfather did. My stepfather crossed every line that a decent human being would cross in sex trafficking and stuff like that. I wasn't sold, but I had to do things for him, no matter what they were. If I wanted to go out with friends, whatever it is that I wanted to do, kind of had its reward for him. If I wanted to do something easy, then it was less. But if I wanted to go away for the weekend to my friend's house, it was really involved. The things that I had to do, things that grown-ups do in a relationship, I had to do for him.
What age were you at this point?
It's the heavier stuff started about 9 years old. I started my body changed, and my top, unfortunately, was always been bigger. So, they've always been there, and it started really, really young. And I don't know if that was a trigger for him to, see me as something more than a little girl, but it started at 9.
That's heartbreaking, and it's hard to hold. I'm just wondering, given the circumstances, and you're talking about your living conditions there and your mum sort of being away and coming back, and had she experienced abuse herself?
As I was doing the research for my book, I've been fighting it for well over 15 years. And I didn't want to do it, didn't want to resurface everything. But during the initial research, when I really started about 15 years ago, I did learn that my grandparents abused her. So she much like me, ran away and married the first person that came along just to get out of the house. But she also had the same sexual abuse that I had. So she didn't have boundaries either.
And it didn't really set her up for success in the way of being able to probably care and protect you guys in the way that she likely would have been able to if she hadn't experienced that trauma herself.
Exactly. And I didn't put this in the book because some of the people are still alive, so I really couldn't, but I'm not going to name names. But in the very beginning, when she was young, when she was about 16 or 17, is when she met my dad. And then he got drafted. The United States, they, at a certain age, would draft people into the military. You had no choice. You turned 18 or whatever, you got drafted. So he got drafted. He had to serve his time. But my mom didn't want to wait for him and stay home. So she met another man and then she married him. And she had right away, she had 3 children from him. She was super young, like really too young to be producing children. And when my dad came back from being deployed and serving his time, he found out she was married. But my mom left that man and left her 3 children that were under the age of 4 alone in that house by themselves to meet up with my dad. I never knew that I had siblings. My father found out and he made her bring them into our life. I didn't find out I had siblings until I was 7. So she had no value system herself in reference to what's right or wrong with her body or anything like that.
This was a really powerful part of your story for me, looking at how these series of events that you have no control over or your mum has no control over, how they set you up for the decisions that you make in the future. And
They do.
not just yourself, but they leave you vulnerable to people who have nefarious motives. When you have been conditioned to accept that kind of behavior, when it shows up in someone else, there is less ability to be able to say, well, no, this is wrong and this is the point where I'm going to change this. I thought that was a really powerful part of your story because in the end, you went through some more stuff, but you've come out the other end and you've changed that cycle for yourself and your own children.
Yes.
Throughout your teenage years, were you able to connect with somebody that felt safe for you when you were living such a large proportion of your life in survival mode?
For the longest time, no. I felt dirty. I felt used. When it came to dating, when I was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I had a bad complexion. I had pimples and I got teased. So nobody liked me, which kind of made me feel okay because I didn't like myself back then. At that point in time, I had one friend, and I'm still friends with her now. And she knows now what I went through, but I didn't even tell her. Eventually, I cut myself off from her because I didn't want to tell her. So I started babysitting. And the lady across the street from where I lived, she was a few years older than me, and she would go out and I would watch her kids. But then eventually, I started going over and I would talk to her and she's like, what's the matter? And I'd cry. And I still didn't tell her. I just said that there's a lot of fighting and there's just a lot of things going on over there and I can't stay there. Can I come here? So I spent a lot of time across the street. And so then she got the brilliant idea. She's like, I'm going to take you out with me. And at this point, I was 15 and I was like, illegal? Like in bars, you can't go to a bar. Back then you couldn't go until you were 18. And I was like, how am I supposed to pull that off? And she's like, well, she was a hairdresser. So she's like, I'll do your hair and your makeup. And you're just going to have to put some clothes that show a little bit. And I felt uncomfortable with that because at that point in time, I didn't like anybody looking at my body because I would think that they were wanting me to have to perform something, and I didn't want to. So I kind of dressed like, um, I don't even know what you would call it, but it was like I used to wear these like sacks, these dresses that were like all the way up to here and all the way down to the floor. I would never show anything. So what she put on me, I was just like, I can't wear this. But I went, and it was a lot of fun. Like, she's like, nobody asked me any questions. I didn't go to drink. I just never drank. I still don't drink. Not for any reason. I just don't like it. I think because my stepfather was an alcoholic, so I kind of didn't like alcohol, but that's here nor there. And so we went out, and I was learning how to dance, and it was an amazing time because I could be me. And she protected me. She was like my my guard. Like, she didn't let any guys come near me. We just had fun. And she kept everybody away from me, and just we had a great time. It was a lot of fun. So every Friday and Saturday night, she would take me out. And I was not doing well in school at that time. I was a sophomore and in high school, and I couldn't study anymore. I had straight A's my whole life. And what was happening, my stepfather, what he was having me do, it was just really breaking me down. And I wasn't going to school because I didn't want to face anybody. I didn't like being teased because of my complexion, and I just hid. And so there was that going on, and my friend taking me out, that I was like, all right, well, maybe I can just quit school. And so I went to my guidance counselor, and I told her. She was the first person that I ever told. And back then, here in the United States, it was a long time ago, you had to have proof of everything. And I had a mom who, when I did finally start telling her some things, she didn't believe me. She said, you need to stop making that stuff up. And I'm like, but Mom, how would I even know what this stuff is? I'm a little kid. Like, I don't even know what this is. I wouldn't have known it unless it was done to me. But she was drinking and going out all the time. So she just kind of had a mindset of, I just don't care. And so I stopped telling her. But my guidance counselor, she was kind of cool. She was like, don't tell anybody, but I'm going to sign you up for your GED so you can graduate. You can take your test and test out of school. But you can't tell anybody that I'm doing this for you because I could lose my job. But I think that this is the only way that you're going to make it, because I don't want you to quit, because I was going to quit school. And she's like, no. So we did it, and I got my GED. I was like, didn't get to graduate, didn't walk down the aisle like everybody else. But I got my diploma, and I quit school and kept going out with my friend. And that one night we were going out to this one bar, and it was really, this band was really good, and everybody followed them. So the parking lots were full all the time. So we got there, and we had to park all the way down the street. And the street, it wasn't in a city. It was kind of in like marshlands and woods. So it was dark. So we thought nothing of it, parked, went inside, had fun. 2:00 in the morning, walking out to the car like we always have done. And she was like laughing, giggling, having fun. And then all of a sudden she just stopped, and she was like, go, get in the car and don't look back. And I was like, okay. And I went to look back, and I'm like, why can't I look back? And she yelled at me. She's like, I'm serious. Don't look back. Keep going. Get in the car. So she was moving. I was moving. We get in the car, and she's like, lock your door. So I locked mine, and she went to lock hers, but the back door wasn't locked. And the person that was following her, that I didn't know, he jumped into the back seat of the car and put a knife to my throat and told her to drive. I still see that knife. That knife was just, it was big, and he just kept it right at my throat. And he told her if she deviated, he would just slice my throat. So at that point I was like, all right, we'll probably die tonight. So maybe I should get my life in order mentally. And, and I just kind of cried, and he's yelling at me for crying, and he's telling her to just drive. And as she's driving, he took us into the woods where we were, where that bar was, is all woods. It would take people days to find us if we were left there. But at least I kind of knew those woods a little bit. So if we had a chance of getting away, we might live. These are the things that were going through my mind. And he proceeded to tell us what he was going to do. He had decisions to make. He was going to either rape us and then tie us to a tree and just kind of slice us so we'd bleed and let the animals come and eat off of us while we were still alive. Either that, or he was just going to slice our throats and spare us that, but he was going to rape us first no matter what. So, but he couldn't make up his mind, and we drove around for hours, and it was still dark though. I knew about God from when I was a little girl, this little church that I would visit all by myself. I'd kind of walk across the street and go when I was still with my mom and dad. And that God that I met there, I was like, well, if that God's real, I'm going to start praying to him now. And so I did. He just told her, pull over. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. And she pulled over, she stopped, he got out of the car and left and never came back. So we were like, what do we do? And so she drove away, and we went to the police station. And of course, he was in the mugshot books, and we picked him out, and he was arrested. And he got out on bail for his, before his trial. And he abducted other people before he went to trial. And he did kill those. He killed 2 people before he was arrested and locked up for life.
You were incredibly lucky.
Yes. That was just, for him to just open that door and get out, still amazes me today that God can just be like, here, get out, open the doors, and like pushes him out. I don't know if that's literal, but you know what I mean? It just was a cool thing to experience and look back on, like, wow.
Such a profound moment for you. I'm thinking about your thought process that you just shared during that. And there's something that I've noticed with trauma survivors, that when they are put in these incredibly difficult situations, that there is a clarity in their thought pattern. And I think it's because you live so much of your life in survival mode that,
Yes.
there's almost a comfort in there. And given your previous experience, for you to be able to go, well, right, if he dropped us off here, I'd be able to navigate back and, we could find our way. But to go back to that little moment in your earliest childhood where you felt safe and secure and you had been going to Sunday school, to lean into that, and then for him to just get out of the car.
Yes.
It's just extraordinary.
It was a really changing point in my life. Like, I knew of God, and I was fascinated at 5. Like, I saw that church from across the street. It was beautiful. It really wasn't. It's this tiny little church. But to me, when I opened up the doors and it had the stained glass windows and the wooden pews, and, it was just really warm in there, and not temperature warm, but you walked in and you could feel love. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but this is cool. And I would just sit there and I would listen to the songs and didn't know what they meant, but I would walk myself across that street every Sunday. And I found out when Sunday school was, and I sat there for 2 years, went to Sunday school all by myself. And my mom never stopped me. She never came with me, but she didn't stop me. And that draw is what I leaned into during this. And it kind of changed the direction for me at that point.
We talk about how significant trauma is in those formative years of somebody's life. But I think your experience there speaks to how our body remembers safety as well. That young Ruth who was going across into this place that felt really safe and warm, when your life was literally on the line, that is where you return to.
Yes. That was the only place that I could remember that was safe.
Mm.
And you're right. I formed so many. I talk to people now about a trauma brain, and that's exactly what I learned to do is you rewire your whole thought process, not to figure out how to be happy. And well, if I do this job and pursue this, I can have this goal. My goals were, how do I keep my stepfather from having sex with me tonight? What do I need to do? And if he comes at me, how can I get away from it or around it? That's what I grew up learning how to do. And you said something interesting. You said that it's almost like a comfort area. Like I can process quickly in that. And you're right. And I think that that's what led into wrong decisions, because I know how to navigate through those kind of people. When I met the right kind of people that were safe and healthy for me, I didn't know how to deal with them. I had no idea how to. It's like, oh my God, he opened the door for me. Like, is something going to happen? Is this going to fall apart? Because like nothing ever good stayed with me. So I always waited for the shoe to drop.
When you've experienced sexual violence in your early years, there's almost an unsafe feeling when you are around regular people because it doesn't make sense to you. You're always waiting for that
Yes.
part where they're going to let you down or they're going to try and hurt you. You don't know how to trust people.
No, it really destroyed my trust patterns. Took me a long time, and I still struggle. I still fall back every once in a while, because it's damaged so much, but you have to sit there and unwire every little tiny thing and figure out how it really should be and learn to live like that. And it's taken years, literally years, to navigate through, but I'm happy where I'm at now. I'm safe and I'm growing and I'm learning.
So how did that early childhood set you up as you moved into adult relationships?
After that abduction, I was kind of like done. I was like, I can't do any of this anymore. So I was either going to commit suicide or I was going to run away. So I chose the latter of the two, and I was going to run away. But in the meantime, I was preparing, like, how does a 16-year-old run away? I don't have a car. It's like, where am I going to go? So I took my mother's car one night and I went out to a bar because my neighbor across the street taught me how to do it. So I was like, I'm going to do this by myself, not to go out and drink or party, or just go out and see if I can find somebody. And I did. I found somebody. He was 8.5 years older than me. And within 3 weeks, by this time, when I met him, I was 17. Within 3 weeks of meeting him, we moved in together. And 3 months later, I was married. So by the time I was 18, I was a wife. And did all of that to get away from the other life. Didn't know anything about him. I mean, like, you can't know anything about somebody in 3 months. I was a kid, and now I have to have sex with somebody. And I didn't like sex because of what I went through. So I'm like, okay, crap, now I'm married to this man and I have to do the things that traumatized me all my life. And so it started off really bad because I had no judgment. I didn't know that that's not what you do. Like, you can't run to another person to save you from something else. That's not, it's always going to be destructive.
But it happens so often.
It does.
In the life of people who have experienced abuse at a young age, that desire to escape. It will make any option that is not what you're currently experiencing feel a lot better than what you're currently experiencing.
Yes. And that's what I thought it would do. But then I guess 2 weeks before the wedding, I didn't put this in my book, but 2 weeks before the wedding, he used different substances. We'll just leave it at that because they were drugs, and the way that he would inject himself and, like, in front of me. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but like, yo, dude, I'm not I don't want this. So we got into a big fight and he called off the wedding. And so I was like, okay. So he kicked me out. And I'm like, so I went back to my mom. And my mom was like, no, you made your bed. Now you got to go sleep in that. And sent me back. So I had to fix things with him because I had nowhere to live at that point in time. We fixed it. So I thought he said he was going to quit the drugs and stuff. Everybody's lied to me my whole life. So I didn't know what was truth or not truth. So do I believe him? Do I not believe him? I don't know, but I need a place to sleep. So, and I didn't have a job because I was 18 years old. So I went back and the wedding came on. It was okay for a quick minute, but then I learned about him and he was a physical abuser. And so I went from one trauma to the next, all because I didn't, like you said, my patterns that I set up in my mind. Because when you're abused, you don't know what to look for. You don't know what's good, what's bad. And so I just went from one thing to the next.
The cycle repeats.
Yes, but I felt good at it. Like you said, I was like, all right, I can do this because I lived through the other part. But that was sexual abuse, and physical abuse turned out to be, that's a whole different ball game. Not that sexual abuse should be downplayed, but learning how to not be killed every day was new for me.
Seeing how many times throughout your life you reached out in the hope that somebody would help, speaking to the guidance counsellor, connecting with the lady across the road that offered safety and some fun in what was otherwise a really difficult part of your life, going back to your mum and saying, hey, this thing's happening, and hoping that she might be able to give you an answer, and you weren't met with that. I keep seeing these places where you reached out and you were like, I need help here. Mm-hmm. And you weren't met with that. It doesn't leave you a lot of options when you're an 18-year-old girl who has a maladaptive view of the entire world and the people in it.
It was very challenging because there really was nobody. I thought several times about telling my brother, but as we got older into our teenage years, and he did guy things, and he no longer wanted his sister to come hang around, not because he didn't love me. He was my only safety throughout all of that, but he didn't know it. He had no idea that I clung to him but I wish I could have always told him. I just started telling him not too many years ago, actually. So I just kind of, it's like, why do I want to traumatize my family? So I shared a little bit, but they still don't know everything.
I understand that completely.
So it's like, why do I want to, they'll be like, then they'll get mad at me. Like, why did you tell me? And I was like, well, sometimes it's hard, but the only person that I could go to at that point was that God that saved me from that abduction. And I tried to figure out ways to get back to that little church. And I did. I started going back on my own. And that opened up a spiritual warfare because my husband at that point in time had friends that were into satanic worship. So not only was I getting hit by him, his friends were doing satanic things right in the house. And it was just a very, very confusing, dark time for me.
How did you leave, Ruth?
After 18 years of the abuse, I started preparing a way to get out. I went to karate school to learn how to defend myself because he let me do that. But he's like, well, I still have to come with you. I was like, I don't care. You come with me. You can watch. I don't really care. Do what you want to do. Going to church, I was learning that I had a spiritual protection that would help me. So I was feeling more confident about myself. I couldn't stop him, but I knew that from what God had done for me a few times, even in my marriage, like when I would come home from church, I'd walk through the door and he would throw knives at me. And they'd always miss. They would hit the walls next to me. I just kept going. And I was like, all right, Lord, you're going to have to protect me. Either that or I'm just going to die now. A couple of times I did try to commit suicide, but thank God it didn't work. But I got stronger, went to the karate school, but unfortunately he took it as well. And he got his black belt. I had injured myself, so I had to quit. So I was like, all right, did I learn enough? But in the meantime, I was trying to figure out safe houses because I had 2 children at that point in time. And I was like, where can I go? And they had safe houses, but none that would offer anything for my kids. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to keep looking and looking and looking. And I was starting to save up a little bit of money. And one night when he came home from work, something clicked inside of him. I don't know what happened, but he was more dangerous than he ever was. And he pinned me to the floor and was strangling me. And I literally was dying. I could feel I was going to pass out. And I was just praying. I was like, Lord, okay, you're going to have to take care of these kids because I'm coming to see you because I'm dying. And I was passing out, and that was the last thing I remember. And then I could feel the pressure off of my neck, and he fell off of me. And I was able to get up, and I struggled, and I got my keys, and I left and never went back. I went back every day to take care of my children through the guidance of the courts. But that was it. I never went back after that 18 years.
It seems like at every point that you asked for help from people, you were let down. But when you asked for help in a spiritual sense, you were protected.
Yeah, he was there all the time. I've grown in that over the years. And that's kind of where I stick now because people still let you down. But he never has. He never has. So it's been a cool journey in that aspect, watching him give back to me things that I lost because I had a hard time after I escaped. And, it was like, okay, I was 35 at that point in time. But at that point, half of my life, well, I should say all of my life, except for the first 5 years, was lived in abuse. So I was like, what do I do now? Because it's like, I'm out, but how am I supposed to act? Am I like, can I go to the movies? Can I talk to people? Like, if I talk to this person, am I going to get in trouble for it? Do you know what I mean? Because everything had a consequence. So it was a whole learning and unfolding to see what I was allowed to do, because I was never allowed to do anything. I wasn't allowed to go to the movies. I wasn't allowed. He separated me from my whole family. I was allowed to do nothing. I did have a job, but he took all my money. So it's like, I didn't know how to save. I didn't know how to budget. But a friend of mine, she was wonderful, and she took me in, and she started my journey of, building a new life that didn't involve abuse anymore.
And unlearning the things that your life had taught you up until that point.
Yes, a lot of people look at me as, oh, but you made it. And I'm like, I made it out of there. But making it out of there isn't the end. That's only the beginning. Because now you have to unlearn all the things that happened and the triggers. Oh my goodness. Like, I was raped by my stepfather in so many different buildings that when I would drive past them, and I blocked so many things out over the years to protect myself. And then all these memories were coming out. And I was like, what in the world is this? So I had to go through a lot of counseling to get all of those things out and to be able to talk to like you about it and not cry and like fall apart. Because people are like, how can you talk about it and be okay? And it's years of therapy. So
yeah. Yep, I can attest. Therapy is the best thing.
Yes, it is. Because I drove past a hotel, and when the hotel finally burnt down, I went and clapped. And when they were going to demolish it, because that was the first place that my stepfather sexually abused me. So I went to celebrate, and people were like, what did that place ever do to you? And I'm like, you have no idea. And I just leave it at that. So it's just years of unraveling after that.
Ruth, share with us a little bit about what your life looks like now.
Right now, I'm going to take a step back a little bit to when I was 50, because that's when I mean, from 35 to 50, I was trying to figure out things. I was still making terrible choices with men because I didn't know and didn't want to face anything. So when I was about 50, I started unraveling and started realizing, hey, you need to learn some things about you and what to do with all of this stuff because the choices you're making are really not cool. So when I started doing that, I was really devastated for years that I never got to graduate high school. I lost all of my childhood. Like I experienced nothing that kids experience, going to proms, nothing. I had none of that. But I had gotten a chiropractic job as a receptionist. And then he was like, well, you really like this. You're really good at this. And so he sent me to chiropractic assistant school. And I was like, I don't have money for this. And he said, nah, don't worry about it. I'm paying for it. So he paid my way and it was a year's class. And I was like doing extremely well. And then I got vertigo towards the end. And I was like, oh no, because I was in and out of hospital for 3 weeks. And then a tornado, to top it off, hit our area where we lived and destroyed our town. And I couldn't get to work. And so it's like, I'm losing my, I'm not going to graduate because I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. I missed so much time. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to graduate. So I kind of put it aside. And when the vertigo went away and we got our town cleaned up, I was able to get out and went back to work. And to find out that during that whole time, it was online. A lot of it was online training and their system broke. And it was out of order for 3 weeks. So people could not take the online classes. So I didn't miss any time at all. So I was like, okay, cool. I went back to, finished up those couple of weeks because it was now at this point, we were supposed to graduate in a week. So I caught up everything and then found out about the graduation. And as I was getting the information, we were supposed to fly to Florida and graduate there. And I was like, cool. So I get a phone call at work and it was the head of the school. And I'm like, I was at work and I said, excuse me, I'm so sorry, but I had to put you on hold. And I'm like, what are you doing? You can't put her on hold. She's the head of your school. But I have patients in front of me and I have to take care of them because that's what I learned in school. Phone calls come second. Get rid of the patient at your desk, send them back to a room, then you can pick up your call. And so I picked up the call and I apologized. And she's like, don't apologize. I would expect you to do that if you had a patient at your desk. And she's like, so by the way, you're graduating as valedictorian of the class. Not only did I get to wear a full cap and gown and walk down the aisle, I got to do that whole experience. And that floored me because everything just, how the way that the school was closed down for 3 weeks because their system was down while I was in the hospital. And I was like, all right, that can only be God. That can only be him. That's when I really got excited and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start unraveling all of this and keep going. And been going that way ever since, building a new business. I retired from being a chiropractic assistant. I did it for 20 years and retired from that. And now run a photography business.
And you are an amazing photographer.
Well, thank you. And that has its own little story because that was my peace in the storms. I would force myself to sit in the middle because I love storm chasing. And I'll go to the beach and the rocks. Do you call them jetties there?
Yeah. Yep.
So like I would go and sit on the jetty in the middle of a hurricane. But it had to be a big jetty where, I'm not going to die and drown. And I would bury myself in the rocks and I would just sit and watch the beauty in the waves, even though people were like, but it's a storm. But I was like, no, it's not. You got to sit in the middle of that and look at the magnificence of these waves around you. And that was my peace. And that's how my photography started, is sitting in the middle of a storm to learn how to find peace. Because that's what gave me my endurance to get through. And yeah, I still chase storms today, but I've also learned to take normal pictures.
That analogy of you sitting in the storm is an allegory for your entire life.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you. It is.
From one person who finds her peace and a lot of my healing from nature, I can really understand where that comes from and what that can provide for you.
And it does. It's a really amazing thing to sit in something and find beauty in it, no matter what's going on around you. So that's where my photography business started.
What about writing the book?
That I argued with God for years on that, and I didn't want to write it. I refused. I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not. And he fought me for 15 years, and I just was like, I can't do that. I can't dredge up all of this stuff. And I'm like, plus I'm not like educated like that, like the therapist that I went to. But he's like, it doesn't matter because people get inspiration from other people. And I was like, I argued. I was like, no, they don't. I can't help anybody. So I wrote the first one. I gave in and I wrote that one. And I thought, I was like, I'm done. I quit. Nope. But then he was like, no. And the story is this is great because he's like, no, I want you to write a women's devotional. And I'm like, okay, I'm not a scripture writer. I can't do this. And he's like, well, I will, haven't I been with you all these years? So don't worry about a thing. So I argued again and I couldn't sleep that night. And I was like, all right, I got up, put my hands on my keyboard. The whole outline for the book was written in 2 hours. And I was just like, all right, I guess I have to do this. So I lived in that one for a little bit. And then I was like, no, people need to understand how to get fixed after. Because like the second one is more of helping you to gain some peace after you get free. And then when you're ready to start the journey of healing and unraveling everything, that's where the third book came into play.
And there's a fourth on the horizon?
Yes, because I learned that watching my husband, he's amazing, it's finally a safe place, but I feel sorry for him because it's like he's a dance instructor. And I didn't realize what triggers I had until I married him about other women. Because he's a dance instructor, most of the people who dance are women. And right away, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's way prettier than me. So guess what I'm thinking? I'm thinking he's definitely going to leave me for her. And so I'm setting up all of this stuff and I have to unravel all of that. And then he's like looking at me like, whoa, what did I get myself into? Because like, she's nuts. He doesn't think that, by the way. But you know what I mean? Like, but that's where I put myself in the man's place. Like, like I needed validation and I still struggle with that, with you love me. Are you going to stay? And he's like, why do you keep asking me that? I said that 10 times yesterday. Do I have to say it 12 today? And I laughed and I was like, unfortunately, yes, you do. And hopefully I'll get past that. But so I'm looking at the man's side. Like they love a woman who has been traumatized, but they don't know what's going on inside of her. So this fourth book sits alongside of the third one. And it'll take each chapter that I wrote for the women and it'll be broken down in man language as I think you guys sampled it.
Yes, I did.
It's for the man to help them understand the woman that they love.
I really love this and I was so excited when you sent me the little teaser. I raced out and bought the third book so I could then be ready for when the fourth book comes. I think it's such a gift to the world, Ruth, what you're doing in opening that up, especially for men. As someone who has a partner who has lived alongside me and supported me in unraveling some pretty wild stuff. We've talked a lot about how much easier it is for him now that he can understand some of my thought processes. And I really think that that this book is going to help a lot of people.
I hope that it does, because that's what my main goal was. And it's not for me to have notoriety at all, because I'm like, I want to be little. I want God to be big. I don't want them to see me. I want them to see the story behind and find the same peace and strength to move forward themselves.
In all of the places that I've been during my life and all of the people that I've met, I don't think I've ever met people more willing to help others than people who have been in trauma-filled situations themselves. There is an aspect of selflessness that comes from those people and a level of empathy. There's also an element of non-judgmentalness when you meet someone who has gone through something like you have, who understands the complexity around trauma-based decision making and how those cycles repeating can lead to other problematic cycles. People who have lived through those types of things don't ever meet somebody else with judgment. They just meet them with acceptance and love. And I think it's a beautiful gift to offer the world.
Well, thank you. Sometimes I'm like, that now I understand a little bit more, because I always wondered, it's like, why me? But it's because that I have, like you said, that ability to understand and not judge. And people are like, well, would you go back in time and change anything? And I'm like, I don't know, because if I did change things, I wouldn't have the children that I have, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today. They're like, well, maybe you would be in a happier place. And I was like, well, but I am in a happy place. So, but I was able to touch so many more lives this way than if I had that happy life. I wouldn't have been able to help anybody.
And you have the ability to appreciate the happiness and the love and support that you
Yes.
have now, because you know what the alternative looks like.
You're right.
Thank you so much, Ruth. This has been a beautiful conversation, and I'm so glad that you were able to join me.
It's been an honor. Thank you for understanding me and letting me share. I truly think that it's cool that people like you do what you do, because it gives our story a voice so that other people can realize that they're not alone, that there is help. There's an opportunity to heal. They don't have to stay stuck like where I was stuck for so many years. So thank you for letting me have that voice.
I appreciate your time so much, and I appreciate you sharing your story, because like you, I truly believe that when we heal loudly and not hidden away from the world, we create permission for other people to speak. All of those times in your life where you were too scared to say, you know, I really need help, or reach out to somebody. I hope that people listen to stories like this and feel differently when they're in that same situation.
That's my goal, hopefully.
I know your storytelling isn't just about looking backwards. It's about reaching a hand out to somebody who might still be living through their own journey of healing. And I have no doubt there'll be people listening today who have seen parts of themselves in your story and will want to learn more about your journey. Before we finish up, can you let everyone know, first of all, where they can find your books and where they can follow your work?
Yes, you can follow me on Facebook, just Ruth Carroll, Ruth and then Carroll. And I do have other pages for my photography and my books, but it's just easier to log on to Ruth Carroll at Facebook, because I do put everything on that mainstream there. And my books can be found, all of them, on Amazon. The first one is called Held by His Hands. The second one is Letters from the Other Side of Pain. And the third one is Miswired, Not Broken. And the fourth one is not out yet.
How long do we have to wait?
Unfortunately, I have so many weddings to photograph, so maybe by the end of this year, I'm hoping.
Well, I will be waiting
know you
for it.
will.
I'm very excited about it. None of us get to choose where our stories start. Some people are born into love and safety. Others spend years wondering what those things are even supposed to feel like. Listening to Ruth, I couldn't help but think about just how many moments there were where her story could have ended differently. So many opportunities for bitterness to take hold. So many reasons to stop believing that people were good or that life could be anything more than what she'd already experienced. But somehow it wasn't the hurt that won, it was hope. Not the loud, triumphant kind of hope, the quiet kind. The kind that starts with one conversation, someone choosing to listen, and the feeling that maybe tomorrow doesn't have to look like yesterday. I think that's why stories like Ruth's matter. Not because they change the past, but because they can change what someone believes is possible for their own future. So if something in Ruth's story has resonated with you today, please don't carry it on your own. Reach out to someone you trust. Have the conversation. Ask the question. Let someone walk beside you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, we would love if you shared this episode with them. Thank you for spending this time with us.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. If These Trees Could Talk and What Would They Say are productions of Bellevue Studio. Our host is Shannon Walters, executive and audio production by Megan Anderson, with socials and marketing managed by Mia Oberdorf. We always appreciate hearing your thoughts, so if you would like to support the show, you can rate, review and subscribe. To stay up to date between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok. For more information on this episode or to connect with our guests, you'll find everything you need to know in the show notes at ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au. We're grateful to have you with us and we look forward to sharing what comes next. Thanks for being here.